Okay. Now, we're in Romans 15:20, I believe. That's where we're starting. And so I'm going to start right now, if I can, with, let's see, we've got James and Chris. And so I'm going to start right here on this front row in the classroom right here. And we'll start with, if you would, I did Jerry last week. Tony, would you start us this week?
Okay.
Please. Take it, well, can you take the whole verse?
Okay. Hutos de Philotine Minon Evangeline Ze Sothai Esthai Zesthai Ux Huto Onomaste Christos Hina May in
Oh, it's F.
F, I mean F Alatrion the May Leon Oi Kodomo.
I'll go dome. Okay. All right. The Russian word for house is dome. My dome is moi dome, my house. Dome. And that's the Greek word for house, too. Dome, one of the words for house. Dome. So, hutos is what? Hutos day?
And so, yeah, you got post positives would be and so or even so.
Okay.
Being ambitious to announce good news.
And that's good news.
Not where Christ was named, so that not upon another foundation I might build.
Okay. Not on another person's foundation. What about this word, hutos here? What part of speech is this, class?
Adverb.
An adverb of manner, see? The os ending is a manner, adverb of manner. So we have an adverb of manner. So that takes us back to the prior verse, really, see? Mm-hmm. And I mispronounced this name of this area last week. I looked it up and I was going to correct it there. And James was pronouncing it correctly, and I was putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Okay? So I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Okay? But right here, he's talking about what he had done, and he had fulfilled the gospel. And he had done it in all of these regions. And we see, if we look at the map, he had worked from this region, and he started up in Antioch and all in this region, and up in here, and he'd gone up into here. But he hadn't gone over to Italy, which is what we call Italy, or Rome, the place. Now we're going to see why. There is a reason why he was not allowed to go over there. I think God providentially kept him from going because he wanted to do the work. God wanted the work done over in this region first. But Paul does go to Rome, and we know that from the book of Acts. So he's looking back to what had happened there. Now keep this in mind.
So how do you pronounce that, by the way?
Pronounce it for us, James. I pronounced Illyricum, but I put the emphasis, okay? I was putting the emphasis in the wrong place.
Well, I'm sure I can't do it right again twice. Illyricum?
Illyrium. Is that right?
No, you put a C in the wrong place.
No. Go ahead, James. You had it right. I looked it up and got on the internet, and Marion Webster pronounced it on their website.
Illyricum?
Illyricum.
Illyricum.
But the emphasis, this syllable is not the accent. I was accenting the iota.
Oh,
and because the Greek accents it there. but the accent's over here, right here. But go ahead, James, you had it right. I checked you.
Oh, Illyricum.
I think that's pretty close to it. Okay. But I was looking at the Greek word and where the emphasis was on it, didn't check my English word. Okay. Wasn't in the same spot. Okay. And so he says, yea or but. Now they will continue something, but it makes a transition to kind of a new thought now.
I put and, is that okay?
And it's translated and many times, okay? All right. Now right here, Tony pronounced this or had this here. How'd you translate that, Tony?
Even so.
No, right here, this word right here.
Being ambitious.
Being ambitious. It's a compound word, philos, which is affection, and affection for honor, love of honor. Okay? Kind of ambition, see? All right? The Romans were really important on doing what was honorable. They were considered, were looked up to if they did something for the whole state, for the government, for the whole nation. And so what fairly rich people would do, they would hire people to build the road, build a mile of road or something like that. And the road was built, and they built it right, because if it wasn't a good road, their name was kind of linked with it. And so but anyhow, that's just part of their background and part of the background of their thinking. And do it right and do it honorably. Okay.
I put endeavoring earnestly, is that?
Striving, endeavoring earnestly, and yours was what?
Being ambitious.
Being ambitious. Those are all will cover it pretty good. All right. My aim, my ambition, I'm striving. Thayer says to be fond of honor or actuated to love of honor, to strive earnestly, to be ambitious. All right, make it your aim. Robertson's word pictures are right here on the screen in the middle, right in here. And Hahn, and he's a book that parses all of your verbs and the participles and infinitives. And it's a book on, and Hahn also and Robertson claim this is the middle voice. Now, I understand that's their interpretation. I agree with them, but it doesn't prove it just because they said it. Okay, so you have to study it yourself. But I think it's the middle voice. It's their aim, and he's wanting to do it for himself or for his own benefit. That makes sense to me. Comments or questions there? And he's going to want to preach the gospel, and again, I think that's in the middle voice as well. And I myself am wanting to preach it. See, you're not being forced to preach it. I think if we've already seen here, the Apostle Paul was delighted to have the job or the role that he had as an apostle, and he considered it a privilege. And so he would look at it differently than being passive in this thing. He's active in it. And that would make this the middle voice here as well, in my judgment, preaching the gospel. Comments?
That's what I put.
And if you preach because you have to preach, someone made you preach, pretty poor reason to preach. If you preach because you love the Lord and want to preach and want to do his work, that's the right motive. Love of the Lord. Love of lost souls. Questions? Not where Christ had been what?
Named.
Had been named. Now wait a second. What does it mean then when we think about this? Not where Christ had been named. I'm wanting to come to Rome, but there's already a church at Rome. There may be something more to this than we're seeing, because there already was a church there. We normally think of that as the gospel being preached and taught. Paul was not, if we go back to the word that we had earlier, back in verse 19, it was to fulfill, he fulfilled the gospel in those places. The naming of Christ is probably put for preaching, teaching, and obedience in various passages here. But he says here, and not where Christ had already been named, right? So he was wanting to spread it into places probably where it hadn't been yet, all right? That's my interpretation. In order it might not build on another man's, say, another man's what?
Foundation.
Now, look at this word another. It's allotrion, allotrion, and from allotrios. And that's from allos. See the allo at the beginning? That's another of the same nature. And so I think he's referring to the work of another apostle. I view, and I think there's some evidence to support, there's certainly extra biblical evidence to it, that the apostles scattered throughout the world. And if that's true, and I think there's implications of it in the passage in the New Testament, but if that's true, then Paul had his assigned region, and he was not going to go over into preaching in another apostle's region. He would not cover it in that region. Not to say if a person traveled from where another apostle was assigned, that he couldn't come in contact with him and be even given gifts by him. That certainly could have happened, but I view this as they had their assigned role. I think the Apostle Paul was assigned the Greek-speaking Gentiles. And he, with his background, he wrote 13, it's arguable whether he wrote Hebrews, but he wrote 13 of the books. And if he wrote Hebrews, that'd be 14. And so.
Is it possible he's referring to Rome there?
Well, he's not building on another man's foundation. We're going to get into that just next. But, right?
Okay, because I don't think there have been any apostles at Rome.
Right, I would agree there hadn't been. I don't think there had been any apostles.
So it could have been that they were.
Because Paul wanted to impart gifts to them. If there had been an apostle, they wouldn't need him to come impart gifts.
It could have
Does that
been.
make sense?
The
Chapter
one of the apostles had already laid hands on some of the members that were there in Jerusalem, and they moved to Rome.
Well, we're going to see a couple of things in the background here in just a minute.
Okay.
And I think it'll clarify a thing or two, at least it does to me. He's not wanting to build on another man's foundation. And the another is another of the same nature. I think it's another apostle's foundation. I think that's what it is. Now, he's wanting to come to Rome and is not wanting to build on another man's foundation. So what this tells me is the church is already in existence at Rome. So building on the foundation is not just establishing a congregation of the church. There's a foundation the apostles laid, and that would be things that only they could do. They were specially chosen witnesses, only they could impart the gifts, and they had the authority to decide doctrine. And so they had certain things that nobody else had. So he didn't want to go where another apostle had gone and laid the foundation and done all these works. So he didn't want to duplicate the work. Does that make sense? That's my interpretation. Now, the apostles laid a foundation, of course, Ephesians 2:20, by preaching, witnessing, confirming. And it seems evident to me, I think we'll get more information, that the apostles were assigned specific regions. And he doesn't want to get over in another apostle's region. Now, here's my argument. If Paul did not want to go where another man had laid a foundation, this is another man of the same nature, say, and he wanted to go to Rome, then another man had not laid that foundation in Rome. Okay? Paul did not want to go where another man had laid a foundation, and he wanted to go to Rome. Obviously, then, another man had not laid a foundation in Rome, and the church had been planted in Rome. And then, if that's true, if another man had not laid a foundation in Rome, now we're going to take that as part of our next premise. If another man had not laid a foundation in Rome and the church had been planted in Rome, then planting a church was not the same as laying a foundation. It's something different. Does that make sense what I'm arguing here? So another man had not laid a foundation in Rome and the church had been planted in Rome. Planting a church is not the same as laying a foundation. Laying a foundation, in this context at least, was doing the work of an apostle that only an apostle could do. And the only things he could do. Fulfilling the apostolic commission, fulfilling the gospel, back in verse 19. What he had done in verse 19. More than preaching. Okay? Now we come back to Ephesians 2:20. The apostles had laid a foundation, same word, but others built upon it. But the apostles laid that foundation. And they were the architects. They were the ones that were guided by the Spirit in establishing the church. The church without the apostles were scattered in Acts 8:1, and they preached, they planted churches. Then the apostles came in and did what in Acts 8?
Imparted special gifts.
Imparted gifts to them, and that's one of the things only they could do. And so they went and settled the churches. And but an evangelist, that is Philip, went out and preached it, and then they established it, and then of course then they're going to impart gifts to people so that they can fulfill other works, and they would establish the churches fully with elders and other works, other people doing the work. So I take it this way: we have them in Jerusalem. Evangelists go out to other places, establish churches, then the apostles come out and lay their hands upon them. They send out other evangelists, and the apostles follow them up. And so the preaching is only part of their work. And they're preaching also through the men like Philip, that they laid their hands upon. Any questions or comments?
Yes, I would like to back up just a little bit to the word allotrios, and you had indicated it's from allos.
Yes.
Notice in the notes you have, and I also looked at this word, it has foreign and strange. See, belonging to one another, not one's own, or foreign or strange. Usually
Yes.
allos has the idea another of the same kind, so to speak. And in this case, something foreign or strange, I'm not sure I'm connecting as to how that being part of the concept of the word fits with it being another of the same kind. Am I making sense?
Here on the screen to idios, his own. So it would be opposed to his own assigned realm that he has been assigned. And there's where it's, and so I think that's why it's strange. It's not his own. If each apostle was assigned a region to go to, or a certain set of people to go to, then Paul is not going to go over to where another apostle has been assigned. There's pretty good evidence that Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, preached to the Slavic people. And that's what the Slavic people claimed. Thomas supposedly went to India. And we have other ones that went to other places. It's historical information to that effect. In the 2nd, 3rd century, they told that. That's recorded in the documents of 2nd, 3rd century churches, that these apostles went to those places. So his own, idios is his own, see? It's belonging to another, not his own. And his own would be his own assigned realm, is my thinking.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm saying, we're just assuming it's talking about regions that they've been assigned. We don't know if they've been assigned regions. We're assuming that that's what that's referenced to.
Paul was assigned to the Gentiles,
Right.
and when we study it more carefully, we find that he was to the Greek-speaking Gentiles. Because he spoke of being to the Gentiles, and he said, "I'm sent to the Greeks." So it's the Greek-speaking Gentiles to whom he was sent.
Right.
And the apostles were sent into the whole world. Now, people will say, okay, that's just the Roman world. And people will argue, well, all the apostles but Paul were sent to the Jews. That's not true. The only ones you can explicitly find that are sent to the Jews were John and Peter. That's in the book of Galatians. All the rest of them, they were sent to the whole world in the Great Commission. If they were sent to the whole world in the Great Commission, then they weren't doing their job if they only went to the Jews. And so they had an assigned place. They had to, because they were told to go into the whole world, preach the gospel to every creature, go into every nation. And they're not saying go into the Roman Empire. People take it to be the Roman Empire. Well, that's not right. How do I know? Can't be right, because if it was the Roman Empire and that's all the Great Commission was limited to, how do we know it's not just limited to that Roman Empire today? It was to the whole world, everybody in the world. And by implication, everybody needed the gospel. So that's my thinking on it. Okay. Any comments? Any more questions or comments? I got too excited there. Sorry about that. That's my reason for saying they were given assigned regions. Paul was sent to the Gentiles. Galatians 2 tells us that. John and Peter were sent to the Jews. James 2 tells us that. All the apostles were sent to the whole world. So as a group, they went to the whole world. Paul went to the Greek-speaking Gentiles because he went to the Gentiles, and later other persons say I was sent to the Greeks. So it was the Greek-speaking Gentiles. Where did the other apostles go? They went to other places. They went into the whole world. The group of apostles evangelized the whole world through their work. And I say they did it this way. They sent out evangelists like Philip. He preached. He established congregations. They followed up and gave them gifts. Then they followed. And the Holy Spirit told them exactly where to go. He knew exactly where to send them.
So are you saying that establishing the foundation is different from preaching the gospel?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so the Great Commission was going all the world, preach the gospel.
Yeah.
Would not be going all the world and establish the foundation.
The foundation is the preaching of the gospel and confirming it with the miracles and laying on of hands and the witnessing of the apostles that only they could give. They were special witnesses. So there's at least three things they did that nobody else could do.
Right.
And so they sent men.
If there's one thing that anybody can do,
Yes,
it's preaching.
that's preach the gospel. But the foundation, let's go back to the argument here. Let me show you my point. If Paul didn't want to go where another man had laid a foundation and he wanted to go to Rome, then another man had not laid a foundation in Rome. So laying the foundation is more than preaching the gospel. See, that's my point. And another man had not laid a foundation in Rome. So if another man had not laid a foundation in Rome and the church had been planted, then planting the church was not the same as laying the foundation. It may be part of it, but it's not the entirety of it.
Okay, I get you where you're going now. I see that. I see what you're saying.
All right. Only an apostle could lay his hands on people, and that's a big point. And this is how the church could spread so fast. They lay hands on men like Philip. He goes out and establishes churches. They follow up, lay hands on men. They send more evangelists out. This thing snowballs. It's a geometric progression. It grows like crazy, like the coronavirus grows, okay? Does that make sense? All right. If every Christian would convert one person every year, the whole world would be Christians in about 40 years. Okay? Wouldn't take very long for it to happen. And the math is there. You just do it. And if they lived 30 years, every Christian lived 40 more years, they would convert the whole world. It's simple. All we got to do is just teach one person each, and this thing grows like weeds, like a virus. Okay. All right. In Acts 8:1, the church without the apostles were scattered. Those who scattered preached the word. That is, they planted churches in the sense that their churches being established. But then the apostles came in, and many obeyed the gospel. Acts 8:4 through 13. After they planted, established by the evangelists, the apostles did their work now, coming in, laying hands on people in Acts 8:14 through 25. That gets back to that word that we had back in verse 19, to fill. To fill. And that, I think James translated that last week. I think it was James. But he translated to fill. He translated it correctly if my memory's right. But I'm getting old, my memory's getting weird. Okay. Another aspect of the foundation is the fact that the New Testament was fully revealed, fully confirmed, fully canonized, and fully disseminated. All these actions were done by the work of the apostles. That's the pattern for all aspects of the church. Okay? Right? And of course, that's their job, to do all these things. Right? Any questions? Yea, my translation, make it my aim to preach the gospel, not where Christ was already named, that I might not build upon another, and I put apostles' foundation, right? In italics, of course. Another of the same nature. Next verse. Jerry, could you read the next verse?
Allah kathos gegraptai ois uk an gelade, peri atu ophontai kai oi uk ake ko asen sune su sin.
Okay.
But, now put with emphasis, according as or just as it is written.
What tense is that? It is written.
Perfect.
Perfect tense. So what's that mean?
It was written and it still is written.
Okay. He's quoting Old Testament scripture. It's still good, isn't it? Still God's word. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Whom are the ones? I think I put the ones. Not. It was announced. Oh, yeah, it was not, but I don't know where the two comes from. It was announced concerning him.
Probably has dated case.
It's dated case. That's correct. This is dated case right here, Jerry, right here.
Which one?
Voice.
On the screen up here that I've highlighted.
Oh, yeah, I have dative on it. So that's supposed to be to whom.
Two.
Oh, left the two off. To whom, to the ones not, it was announced concerning him, they shall see, and the ones not having heard, they shall understand.
Okay. Now, who do you think he's talking about here in this context? Who are the people that he was not spoken of?
The Gentiles.
I think it's Gentiles.
They may not recognize who it was, but the Jews all knew about it.
Now, let me point out something. Allah, and it's on the screen up here. Allah, what it does, it introduces a new set, not a member of the original set, a new element. Okay, so it's something new here. So it's a change in what he's been talking about. He's changing subjects here with us. Okay, that's Allah. It has been written. That's Isaiah 52:15. We're going to see, and that's future middle. Now, we're not passive in our seeing. We're not passive in our understanding, bringing ourselves to understanding God's word, because we have to think about it and meditate on the word and actually put it to practice in our lives before we really fully understand it. So that's why it's middle voice, in my judgment. To whom, of course, is dative, tidings, or the message that which is announced. That's the same word as what it's angelo is. Angelo is the verb form of the angel, isn't it? But this is ana angelo, so it's from above. See, announced, brought down to us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That may even imply it come from God because of that ana. Tidings of him. Who is him?
Had to be Jesus.
I think it ought to be capitalized. I think it's Jesus.
And I put an arrow back to the Christ.
Yeah.
Because that was the last subject.
Right. Now, let's look further. And they, let's see here now. And they have not heard. That's perfect also, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Shall understand. Now, this is an interesting word because soon is to come together. And when you study this word, if you have my books on the role of women, I devote a whole chapter to this word in volume 1 because it's the idea of understanding, coming to an understanding. And of course, soon is with. So it's to bring together or send together things. And one of the scholars likens it to two rivers coming together. I'm reminded I've flown back east several times, and I've flown over St. Louis area. And when I did, I could look out and see the Ohio and the Mississippi rivers in their different colors when they come together. It's kind of interesting. I kind of reminded of that. I'd love to take a picture of it sometime when I was flying, but it's kind of hard to do. But I'd love to do that because what he's doing is all of the facts of the Bible are now being brought together, the information, right? And we come to an understanding of it. Everything's brought together. Everything is put in this place. I took courses in college in which I always joke to myself, I understood Algebra 1 whenever I took Algebra 2 in high school. I understood Algebra 2 when I took my first calculus course and so forth. That's it seemed like I was always one class behind, and so it was always a battle to me. So things come together, and that's what we have here. But as it is written, they shall see to whom no announcements of him came, and they who have heard, not heard, shall understand, shall come to understanding. All right? Are there questions or comments? Right. I think this is chiasmic parallelism, and that's what we see here, and I made a little chart for it, and I couldn't get my chart exactly right. But we see here, we see seeing and no announcements, not hearing and no announcements, seeing and understanding. And I think it's mean to have it just exactly right. All right? But right there. Seeing and understanding, not hearing and no announcements and not hearing. Okay?
So obviously seeing and understanding are connected.
Yes.
There's no, he's wanting them who haven't heard to hear so they can see and understand.
Yes, I believe that's correct. All right, so here's my parallel passages. Again, you'll have this when we finish this in January. We probably should finish this course sometime, Romans sometime in probably February. Okay. All right. Now then, let's start with verse 22, and I'm going to pick on James, if you would, and then Chris will follow him up with the next verse. All right? If you would, James.
Yes, sir. Dio kai. Oh, sorry.
I just said please. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir. Dio kai anakoptomen ta pola tu elphain pros humas. And I have that translated as wherefore also I was being hindered. Then I put many and put times in parentheses as the understood word for the pola, what would follow it, and to go to you.
Or to come to you.
Yeah, I saw it from.
Be go or come either.
Yeah, I saw it from his perspective. He would have to go to them. From their perspective, he would come to them.
Yes, and it's hard to tell which way it should be translated. It's kind of a toss-up, I think. But wherefore is a strong inference, according to Dana and Manny. It's the strongest inference that there is. Then they turn around and say, well, DOT is a little bit stronger. Okay, there's one a little bit stronger. Okay, DO per is twice used. It's slightly stronger than DO. But the DO is used a lot and DO per is only used twice. I think that's his point. It's a real strong inference. Okay, something real strong. And he was hindered. Now, how was he hindered? We don't know altogether, but did God tell him not to go preach in certain places?
Send him somewhere else instead.
Yeah, he did.
That's pretty much the same as saying no.
Yeah, and he sent him. He wanted to go to Bithynia, and the Spirit wouldn't let him. I think he probably went later, but so God sent him in various places. That's one way he would be hindered. And could he be hindered by being put in prison? Would Satan be involved in that? He couldn't come if he were in prison, could he? Now then, there's something else. In 1 Thessalonians 2:18, Satan had hindered him at least one time. 1 Thessalonians 2:18. So here we see God told him sometimes not to go a certain place or to go a certain place. And then Satan hindered him. And of course, Satan, I think, was involved in putting him in prison. So that would be Satan working, trying to undo God's work. But old Satan can't beat God, okay? He's going to lose, okay? God's going to win. Now, we have another situation that come up that I've never heard anybody link it with the limiting of Paul. And we'll get to it here in this next verse or two, okay?
Unless it does in this one, which I don't remember. He also spent a lot of time in Corinth and in Ephesus.
Yeah.
And very possibly because the church itself and their immaturity took way more amount of effort to overcome or to teach, and that could have been a hindrance to him too. He couldn't leave the work. It had to be done.
If you look at where Roman roads were, Ephesus had roads going in and out all over the place, like spokes of a wheel. And so it was a key city. And if he preaches in Ephesus, there's going to be people traveling in from other places. And people could come to him, members of the church could come to him for him to lay hands on. In other words, people could be living 60 miles away. Well, I know where the Apostle Paul is. We got this new convert, and the Holy Spirit says send him down there to Paul to get hands laid on him. So that Paul didn't have to go all the places if these people would come to him.
It wouldn't necessarily be a bad.
The Roman roads were very, very good.
It wouldn't necessarily be a bad hindrance, but it would still be a hindrance.
Yeah.
He certainly set up a place in Ephesus for people to come in. There was a spot where everybody knew he'd be.
I don't think we fully understand how God could work in his providence. Providence.
Right.
I think he's much wiser than we. I suspect we consider him infinitely wise, but We sometimes, we don't understand all that's going on. This is imperfect tense. I was hindered. Now, what's the imperfect tense?
Continuous action in the past.
Okay, so it's looking at it like a panoramic view, like a motion picture, isn't it? Okay, and we had extensive notes on chapter 6, verse 20 on this as well. So Satan hindered Paul at least once, but it's imperfect. So I think he kept on hindering him, putting him in prison and having him beaten and everything. But he's just not going to stop the work. He can't stop it. He can't defeat God. God wins. These many times, see, many times. You translated that times, it could be many occasions, but I think times is a good rendering, personally. Right? Now, I want you to see this word right here. Always. When you get the word ion, forever, it's a combination of that word and a participle. Okay? So that's very interesting if you look at it, and Thayer tells you that, right? For my coming, and it's translated coming, or my going. Again, it could be translated either way. To you or towards you. The Holy Spirit directed Paul where to go. Keep that in mind. Now, Paul went where the Spirit told him to go. In Acts 16, 6 through 10, he told him to go over to a city across in Philippi, Macedonia. And we know what happened there. The church in Philippi became a strong church supporting his missionary work, supporting him in his work, and giving him support. And of course, one of the problems we have to understand the nature of the Greeks' thinking and the thinking of the Romans. The Greeks considered if you took money for teaching, you were kind of sold out. A man ought to teach for the love of what he's teaching. And so among the Greeks, Paul supported himself or let somebody else support him. But he didn't ask the Greeks for support. He didn't ask them for support. But the Philippians was a Roman colony, and the Romans considered a workman is worthy of his hire, basically. They had it right. And so there's no problem with him getting support from them. And so, again, I think if you understand the background of the people, you can see the situations, how they work. Any comments? Yeah.
I did have a question.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I kind of jumped in a little late. On top pola, it had the definite article and not the word these. Is that common to translate with thee when the definite article is there?
Yeah, the many what? The many something. So it still has to, and ta is of course the neuter. And so it's many things or times.
I'm sorry.
Could be many occasions that he was hindered.
Okay. I'm sorry I didn't say it very clearly. It's ta ola, and ta is the definite article, right?
Yes.
So it's not these, it's the many times.
The many times, yeah.
So, but I thought you have these many times on your graph there, your chart.
Well, that is the American Standard.
Oh, okay. So the American Standard, why would they choose these when the Greek word is not these? It's the many times. Is that common?
I can't ask them. Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought maybe there was some standard or something I was missing.
They're interpreting a bit.
Well, it's accusative plural neutral. It is plural.
It is plural neuter is what it is. The many something.
Plural neuter.
Yeah.
Neuter. So that may be why they did these, because the word ta is plural.
The many, these many. Yeah, it's not the normal word for these. That's your point. That's a good point. right?
Yes, sir.
These many times, or I was coming to you and was wanting to come. I think one reason that we have overlooked, and I overlooked it, and I have not read any commentators that brought it up, okay? In AD 49, Acts 18:2, what happened?
People got kicked out of Rome,
What people got kicked out of Rome?
Jews.
The Jews. Was Paul a what? What race was
He
he?
was a Jew.
So he was a Jew. So the Jews were banished from Rome in AD 49, Acts 18:2, by Claudius. When Claudius died in AD 54, that's just a little bit, that's about the time Paul is going down to Jerusalem. That's the fund of money that he was given to take down there. But what we have is Claudius died in 54, and that ban was not renewed by the next emperor Nero. So there was no Jewish Christians in the church at Rome during this period. So the church during that period was strictly Gentile, completely Gentile. They were banished, and it was under penalty of death. So they left. Aquila and Priscilla left. They probably were Christians at that time when they were there. Okay. All right. But we don't know that for a fact, but they probably were. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, I say probably they were certainly the foundation of the Roman Church.
Yeah. And so,
or not the foundation, but they were the key members. If the church was in their home anyway.
yes. That means the church in Rome was totally Gentile during that period. But that would explain why Paul couldn't come. And God allowed it, in my judgment, because God's in control. He allowed it because Paul needed to do his other work elsewhere. Paul might have wanted to go to Rome, but he couldn't because of this. At least from, 47 up to 54? Yeah, from 47 to 54, 49 to 54. Okay. AD 49, that's about 5 years. So he wasn't able to go until 54. But he spent some time in prison too, so Satan was busy. All right.
When was the book written to the church at Rome?
57, 58 AD.
Okay. So it's probably still primarily Gentile at that point.
Yeah, the Jews probably had started filtering back when they realized they could come back to Rome.
Yeah, Clovis is over there.
We have them coming back. Now, here's the such situation now. The church there were strangers from Rome. There were people from Rome in Acts 2 probably obeying the gospel. Okay? And so these people, in my judgment, when they went back to Rome, they had gifts. The apostles laid hands on them. And probably the most important gift would be prophets. I mean, that's the most important gift would be a prophet, evangelists and teachers and so forth. And so they sent back a group of people that had miraculous powers and had these abilities. And so they planted the church there, and then Paul has to come in and lay the foundation, finish it out. Okay.
Isn't it your contention, I believe, if I've read in some of your books, that probably Cornelius was about like 3 years?
3.5 years after
the church?
3.5 years after Pentecost.
So there would have been lots of Gentiles probably converted.
Yes.
From that time.
Yes.
On.
And they would have established the people in the Romans that were baptized in Acts 2 would have gone back, and with about 3.5 years later, they would have been able to convert Gentiles.
Right.
They would have taken the Jews and converted them, probably gone 2.5 years or so, and then they began to preach to Gentiles.
Right.
So that's where the church comes in. That's my judgment as to what happened. I can't prove that, but we know they're mentioned in Acts 1 and 2, particularly Acts 2, early part of Acts chapter 2. I think it says strangers from Rome. I can't remember how it's worded. But anyhow, there were people from Rome that were there in Acts 2. Right? Now, what does he say here? But now what? Okay. Let's see. I guess, Chris, I had you the longer verse here. Can you take this?
Yes, I can.
Please.
All right. Nuni de Maketi Topon Ekon in Tois Climasin Tutois Epipothian de Ekon tu Elthane Pros Humas Apo Polon Eton. So I translated now, but, so it'll go but now since it's post positive, but now no longer a place having in the regions these a great desire, now having had two of the, it didn't read too well, to come to you, Apo is from, but it reads better with for many years.
Okay, from many years. That would be like they would say for many years.
Yeah.
We could say from the time I was a youth to now, I've done so and so. See, that's what
Okay.
we'd use the word from. All right. All right, but kind of introduces the new thought transition. See, now look at now. There's a difference between noon, which I've highlighted here, and noon with the iota subscript. And it's a little bit stronger than the word now. Noon is now, noony is now at this very moment. So it's a little bit stronger than just noon, right? It's got an iota demonstrative, like a demonstrative pronoun. I'm pointing out this time, now at this moment. The word this is a demonstrative pronoun in English.
There's been a change.
Having, now see, there's a participle. No more any, no longer any other place, see? Right? And in these regions, okay? And I think our word climate comes from this, klima, but I'm not sure. I'd have to do more studying on that, but I think that's where it comes from. So here's a region. I've gone to the regions I'm supposed to go to. I don't have any more places to go. So I need to come to Rome to finish more work there, to fill up the commission or the gospel. Right? And I think the places are what he wrote about back in verse 19. All those places from Jerusalem up to Illyricum. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. I'm having trouble with that. All right? And of course, in Acts 16, the Holy Spirit guided him some places where to preach, and Satan hindered him. I've got these highlighted here. It's possible God allowed Satan to hinder Paul, and this is one way God providentially guided Paul's missionary journeys. Sometimes troubles happen to us, and we don't realize that trouble can actually be a way to help us to grow or to not make the decision we wanted to make. All right. I've had situations that disappointed me, and I was disappointed in it, and I found out in the long run I was better off not to have done what I got into. Okay. Illustration: I joined the Navy in 63, and I was in flight school, and then on the third physical they found a hole in my eardrum, so they discharged me. I had a contract with them. They had to give me a commission if I got my wings, and so I was real disappointed. Well, lo and behold, I didn't go to Vietnam and maybe get killed in Vietnam. One of my bunkmates in pre-flight died at the Hanoi Hilton. He died in the Hanoi Hilton, so that's very interesting. You see, sometimes things happen, and I'm not saying it's providential. I'm just saying it worked out for me for the best, okay? Any questions or comments? I think God guided the apostles to the most receptive places first to use as stepping stones. We look at the places where Paul went there, and we get a map, and I got a map off the internet, but of Roman roads. And the places where he was preaching were on the Roman roads, and many of the places like Philippi had a bunch of roads, and Ephesus had a bunch of roads coming in and out of them. So that's very interesting. Of course, Corinth was a port city, and so ships would come in and out. And so again, we have the ability to spread the gospel through that means. It's like being on an interstate highway in the United States. Oklahoma City has 3 interstates coming together. It's a pretty good location. 3 interstate highways coming together like spokes on a wheel.
It is for drug traffic.
Yeah, it's for drug traffic too, yeah. That's true. And having these are from many years, a longing. I've been wanting to come to you. Now here we have the article with the infinitive, and what we have here, up here, I'll highlight it. The article with the infinitive, what it does, it's an event. Think of it as an event. And I illustrated, I think last week, maybe it's in another class, other than the Greek class, can't remember. But I went to town shopping for groceries. All right. Well, I went to town to shop, to get groceries, to purchase groceries. To purchase is an infinitive. And so that becomes an event. And it's an event here. And so to come, it's the event of coming, because it's an article with the part of an infinitive. And of course, the circumflex, the infinitive here would be the same, spelling the last 3 letters with the present infinitive. The accent would be over here with it, and the aorist infinitive would have the circumflex on the iota, but they'll all end in the epsilon iota nu. That just gets confusing if you're not careful. You can really mess up on them. Okay. All right. Unto you, by the use of the article now, he said he needed to go to the region. This is an event. The coming is an event. Right? Any questions? Wait till the little hourglass goes away because I can't advance it. There it is. I translated, but now having no longer any place in these regions, and having for many years a longing for the coming unto you. Some premillennialists will see that footnote 666 and get excited. Having for many years. All right. We have gone nearly an hour, and we'll pick up in January with verse 24. Are there questions or comments about anything we've covered here? I just covered 4 verses, but we got off on other stuff, and that was not hurtful, so that's no big deal. All right. I think Paul went to Spain, and that's my thinking, and we'll get to that in January. We'll start class again January the 19th, same time, same place, in the next year, 2021. Okay. Are there questions or comments?
Hopefully that'll be a better year.
Hopefully it'll be a better year, and the Lord willing, we'll start class at that time. Any questions or comments?
I'll catch you when we're off.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for teaching.
Well, thank you.